everybody, and welcome to Fuel Talk. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Liam Quegan, who is the MD of Managing Director of NextGear Capital. So welcome, Liam.
Well, thanks a lot for having me, James. Good to be here.
Indeed it is, and thanks for your time. I know it's very precious. So in Fuel Talk, as you know, we spend roughly 10-15 minutes talking to guests around the Cox Automotive business, and obviously with yourself and your remit as the leader of NextGear Capital, there's plenty to catch up with you on in terms of what's been happening, pre-lockdown as well as post. So I guess for starters, I just say, Liam, what observations have you had? How have you had to react as a business to the pandemic?
I mean, as we sit here on the 14th of September, it feels like a long time since those strange days of late March. Nearly 6 months ago. I think certainly going into that situation, that we didn't know what we were facing, and we were very worried that our dealer partners were going to face a struggle like they'd never faced before, and therefore, if they struggle, we struggle. So it was a very, very strange time thinking back on it. But one of the things that NextGear was always keen to do was just make sure that through that challenging time, we did everything to support our dealers. And, my kind of biggest observation overall has been how well many of our dealers, in fact, the vast, vast, vast majority of our dealers have dealt with, unprecedented is an overused word at the moment, but a unprecedented time. And, I feel really proud of the fact that I think NextGear has been a supporter of the independent dealer network that we deal with and the franchise dealers that we deal with both in the UK and in Ireland. And, going right through the challenge we've faced and the crisis we've faced, we've always been there to allow dealers to fund units. And as they've started to get back to the market, which they did in late May, we've seen a huge number of dealers return to the market well, and many of them are doing fantastically. So as we sit here now, I feel much, much better than I thought I would have done if you'd said to me at the end of March, we're locking down for a couple of months and then we'll see what happens. I think we just find ourselves in about as optimistic a position as we could be. So very proud of that.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And I know in common with Cox Automotive globally, but also across other divisions, I was really proud to see how we were supporting our dealers and customers through that challenging time. So what specifically within NextGear were we doing to support those customers?
I mean, it's a great question, and there are a couple of things we did very specifically. I think the primary thing we did was we allowed dealers to keep units, either cars or vans, on their plan longer than we would ordinarily do. So we removed the restrictions for dealers to carry on funding vehicles and they held them for longer than they would under ordinary circumstances, because they just couldn't sell them. So we just did the sensible thing and said, look, you can't sell these units, so we're not going to expect you to pay us back for them. We're going to extend those timeframes. We also did some other things. We cut our interest rate, and we reduced some fees as well. So we did some stuff that we took, it caused us some, kind of financial pain, to make sure that our dealers were supported. But the primary thing was really saying to dealers, look, those cars that you've got on plan that you bought before the crisis, don't worry about having to settle them. You can keep them on. We also, and this is really important, we allowed dealers to carry on funding vehicles as well. So whilst there may have been a situation where we saw, certain dealers who would, basically shut down, there are others who chose to carry on funding vehicles through the crisis and prepare themselves when they return to market. And we were happy to do that as well, which, we actually saw quite a lot of activity, particularly in May, despite the fact that the country was in lockdown, to basically allow people to carry on funding vehicles. So, they were the key support activities we did. They were very similar to the support activities that took place in the US and in Canada, in other NextGear businesses, and they've worked really well, I think.
Yeah, no, indeed. And as you talk about the word unprecedented, which you're right, it is, it's probably it's the word of 2020, isn't it? In terms of coming back into that marketplace, as we saw it and we've ourselves as Cox Automotive published a lot of insights and observations around that marketplace. But I think we find ourselves in a unique position, as many countries around the world are reporting and are in recession. But it's a recession unlike we've ever experienced. It doesn't appear to be a liquidity, a financial recession. It's just clearly because of the whole global supply chain has closed and reopened. So from that perspective, we've seen a lot of certainly used values and demand for vehicles, but used values increasing. So has that presented particular challenges around the funding model?
I mean, in a lot of ways, I would say we're in a much better position than I would have thought, having managed, lending businesses through a couple of recessions. I think the reality of the demand for vehicles, whether it's LCVs or cars, has been really, really strong. And that's good to see. So I think there is some surplus cash out there for people to spend. People haven't been on holidays and people have cut back on spending in other ways, like they've not been having to spend money on transport and so on. So I think that has really helped. And some of the government schemes have definitely helped us as well as a society. I think we have to we have to be pragmatic. And at the moment, we have to realise that as we see cases increase, as we see restrictions increase, and those restrictions come into force today in England, where you can only spend time with 5 other people in your household and those kind of things. These restrictions are likely, in the short term, likely to get more restrictive rather than less. So we still need to be very alive to a position that is, at the moment, about as good as I could have anticipated. But we go into more challenging months. We're going to go into worse weather. We're going to go into situations where generally more people will be inside, and the flu season is upon us. Also, as we sit here right now, some of the government schemes are due to expire. So I think we have definitely made our way through a very challenging period pretty effectively, both internally through Cox Automotive and NextGear, but also more broadly as a society. But I am worried about Q4 and Q1 of 2021, and we just need to be well placed to support dealers, make sure that team members are safe, make sure that customers are safe as we go through this. So in a lot of ways, I think it'll be about looking back at Christmas and saying, how are we, rather than now. We've obviously dealt with it in a pretty good way, both I think as a society, but also as a business. There's more challenge to come.
Yeah, no, indeed, absolutely. And in terms of those customers of ours, then, of NextGear Capitals, in terms of those dealers who have looked at, presumably in terms of their own businesses, because they have premises, they've had rent rebates or rent reductions. There's the coronavirus business continuity loan. Has anything changed? Have you seen any trends, short-term trends, as you say? Because I know we're moving through this. Any short-term trends or any advice that you want to give dealers, knowing what we've seen in those early weeks?
I mean, it's definitely true, and I think it's a great thing that many of our dealer partners have taken advantage of government support. A number of our customers have used business interruption loans and bounce back loans and those kind of things, and I think that's a great thing because it's allowed people to weather the storm. Of course, people have also taken part in the furlough scheme and have looked at their business models. I think what I would say is thematically, what I've seen is probably a few people spending less on funding platforms like ours in the short term. I think if that's the right thing for the business, then they should do so. But remember that we're always there to support them and always will be. We're a big company with deep pockets, and we look to support dealers through good times as well as bad times. And in terms of advice for dealers, I mean, it's fairly obvious, really, under any circumstances, without COVID or with it, keep an eye on your cash flows, keep an eye on where your costs are and those kind of things. And I think this situation just exacerbates that. So making sure that costs are really front of mind for dealers is important, and making sure that they're putting some money aside if things get a little bit difficult, because whilst the market is definitely strong at the moment, we always know it ebbs and flows. And, there is a chance that government support that we've enjoyed, frankly, through the last couple of months may not be quite there later on in the year and into 2021. So just be, don't bite off more than you can chew would be my fundamental. I think if people think there's a huge opportunity here to grow into space and they want to invest heavily and all that sort of stuff, just be really careful, because the market has been buoyant, but there's also been a lot of pent-up demand. And I just don't know, and I genuinely don't know, none of us do, what that looks like in the next 6 months. It may stay really, really strong. Likewise, it might tail off as we go into the second half of the year properly, and people just need to be a bit careful. So my main advice to people is prudency and making sure they're very careful about their business model we will support them however they need to, and we have been actively supporting dealers as they come out of this.
Yeah, and we've had some great feedback, haven't we? And I know your team have had some amazing feedback through the whole process, that we've been connected and supporting, as you've indicated earlier, but not just with the business support, but actually fundamentally, as you say, as human beings, touching on that team member piece. I know your team have been out supporting your customers, which is amazing, and it's something we've seen across Cox Automotive. So to be applauded, definitely.
Yeah, and we made a very conscious decision that our account management team should stay in the field, once it was safe to do so. So yes, for a couple of months they were on, they were at home, but then they, with appropriate PPE and appropriate guidance, they've been out seeing dealers, and the amount of kind of positive feedback we've had for having people on the ground, talking to dealers, helping them solve problems, working with them to get their credit lines right and access to stock correct, that's been really, really positive. So we felt like we've had a human face to our business when this has been a difficult time. And, I think that's been, kind of recognized by our dealer base, but also by our people as well. I think our people have, we didn't furlough, very few people in NextGear really, but we didn't furlough any of our customer facing folks. And that's a big deal for us, I think.
Well, it's great to have that feedback, Liam, and as you say, looking forward to the next few months. No doubt having that strong team behind you delivering for the customers is what it's all about. So listen, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate that. And good luck to you and the team for the coming weeks and months.
Thank you, and good luck to all of our customers as well, because it'll be an interesting ride, but I think we're set up well. Thanks a lot, James.
Cheers. Thanks, Liam.
Bye-bye.